Hello out there from the Badger Rock Kitchen. Here we are for another one of our virtual cooking workshops. Today we are going to show y'all how to make homemade pizza with the crust and all. So I know pizza dough is sometimes the most intimidating part about making a pizza, but it's not too hard once you get the feel for it. You make your first dough, and then it's like riding a bicycle. You can just start to knock it out really fast. The beautiful thing about homemade pizza dough too is you can let it rise. You use yeast in a dough, but if you're short on time, you don't have to let it rise. I have made many a pizza when I'm crunched for time without even letting the dough rise, and it's a little less puffy dough, but it's still delicious. So it's a good trick for when you're short for time. And we are going to make a half recipe of dough. So I'll pop the recipe for the dough and for the tomato sauce, homemade tomato sauce if you want to make your own, and for a homemade pesto, which you can make at this time of year. If you have a hoop house or know a farmer who has a hoop house, you probably already have fresh spinach going on in there. And so we're going to show y'all how to make a pesto using fresh spinach too. So we'll put all those 3 recipes in the comments once this is posted as a video. And in the meantime, we will demonstrate how to do it in person. So the first thing you need for making your own dough is some water. Just make sure that your water is warm, because the goal with the water is to dissolve the sugar and dissolve the yeast. So if you were making a full recipe, you would use a full cup of warm water. I'm only making a half recipe, so I'm just going to add in a little half cup of water. And I am going to use some yeast. And you can get yeast in a big container like this, or those little packets I'm sure you've seen in the grocery store. Either one works. Just look on the side for the directions of how to use a can this size. So this says 2 1/4 teaspoons per quarter cup of warm water. But for this recipe, what I would use is 2 1/4 teaspoons total for my whole cup of water for pizza dough. And since I'm making a half recipe, I'm just going to do a little over 1 teaspoon of yeast into the water. And what feeds the yeast is the sugar. So yeast is a living thing. It is going to actually eat the sugar. And when it eats the sugar, it lets off carbon dioxide, which is the gas that makes your dough rise. So I'm just swirling around in here. If you have a whisk, you can use that too. And just get that sugar and that yeast all nice and dissolved in that water. You can also use honey if you don't want to use table sugar. Honey will do the trick just as well. And some people prefer that. And if you have bees, then you have your own honey too. Mm-hmm. So we have our yeast all dissolved in here and our sugar all dissolved in here. And if you're not sure if your yeast is still good, if you've had it for a long time, you can do what's called proofing the yeast. So just let it sit like this, and it will start to bubble on the top, make kind of a foam on the top, and that's how you know your yeast is still good to go. I know this yeast is good to go, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm going to put about 1 1/4 cups of flour right in here, right into this yeast mixture. And I'm going to add just salt to taste. I usually put about 1/2 teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt. And then you can just get your hands in there, or you can use a spoon if you don't like to get your hands up in the dough. But I love the feeling of some dough in my hands and kneading it up. So you're just going to kind of work that dough until it all clumps together in a ball. And then you're going to knead it. And kneading it is just pressing on it. I'll show you kind of the technique I usually use for kneading once I can get this all into one ball of dough. I'll take it out of the bowl and show you all the kneading process. So I just use the heel of my hand and I kind of press it. I press it and I twist it. I press and I twist and I press and I twist. And for pizza dough, the more you knead it, the more it'll get those gluten strands kind of connecting with each other, and the more kind of chewy your dough will be. So depending on what kind of texture you like your dough, you can knead it longer or shorter. But I just knead it. I knead it until it feels right. So you can see. And if your dough is a little bit too sticky, no worries. Just add a little bit of flour. And if you have a lot of extra flour in the bottom of your bowl that didn't get incorporated into the dough, don't worry about that either. You can just add a little water. So it's very fixable even if you don't get the amounts just right off the bat. So yeah, when it starts to feel right, it feels, how can I describe what it feels like? It feels like this. So you can just feel that all that flour is incorporated in there really well. It's nice and soft, but it's not too sticky, and it doesn't have dry flour in it anywhere. It is one solid ball of dough, not too sticky. That's what we're going for with the dough. And if you want to let it rise, you can just pop it back in the bowl. I usually put a damp towel over the top just to keep it from drying out, and just let it sit. Once it doubles in size, you can punch it down and just let it rise a little bit more again if you want to. And then you can just shape it into your pizza dough, and there you have it. So, pizza dough demystified, not too hard. And we are going to show y'all how to make, instead of tomato sauce, a pesto for a topping. Because like I said, spinach is in season right now. If you have any kind of season extending structures in your garden, or if you know anybody who does, and what you will have at this time of year already, if you're lucky, is some nice fresh spinach. And spinach that's been through a frost, like the spinach that's in the garden right now, extra sweet, because plants use sugar as an antifreeze to keep themselves from freezing. So spinach actually does have more sugar in it when it's been through some freezing weather. So I'm just going to take the stems off of this spinach and stick it right directly in the blender. You want about 2 cups of whatever green you're using. Pesto is usually made with basil. So if you want to do this again in the summertime when your basil is going in the garden, go for it. It tastes delicious either way. You can mix and match. You can do a little basil, a little spinach. You can make it with kale. I've made pesto with collard greens, anything green pretty much. Any green leaf you can use to make pesto. So I'm going to not measure, but I will put a recipe with measurements in the comments. But I'm just going to put some olive oil, probably about 1/4 cup for 2 cups of greens. And then some people use pine nuts. Those are really expensive. So I usually use sunflower seeds. You can also use other nuts, but I try to stay away from nuts, especially when I'm cooking with kids, because of all the nut allergies that people have these days. So you want about 1/4 cup of sunflower seeds or pine nuts or whatever kind of nut you're using. This adds a little protein into your sauce too, which is good for your body. And these are salted and roasted sunflower seeds. That's my favorite for making pesto. And then you're going to add in, I usually add in just 1 clove of garlic. Raw garlic is super strong, so you don't want to overpower yourself. Well, maybe you do. And if you do really like garlic, you can feel free to add some more. But raw garlic is strong, and it is a medicine in and of itself. And then the last ingredient in pesto is Parmesan cheese. And if you do not eat dairy, you can substitute in nutritional yeast, which is, it's another kind of yeast. And nutritional yeast is super high in B vitamins, so it's really packs a nutritional punch for you too. If you're looking for a cheese alternative, it's a good one. And I usually put about 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese in a pesto recipe. So I have my spinach, my sunflower seeds, my garlic, my olive oil, my Parmesan cheese, and since these sunflower seeds are salted, I probably don't even need to add salt. But if you used unsalted seeds, you should add a little salt in there just for the flavor. And then you can blend it up. And the pesto, you know, kind of like your dough, if it's a little too dry, you can add a little water. If it's a little too wet, you can add a little more greens. So I'm just going to blend this up. Pesto is also a great, delicious way to get some vegetables into your kids. If they're not so sure they want to eat some vegetables, you can sneak it in there with some pesto. It tastes really good. With those cheese and those seeds, it is a delicious treat. I'm just going to give it one more little blend. Scrape the sides down. All right, and just like that. So pesto, is also so fast. If you're a busy person and you're trying to feed your family, pesto is something you can make in like 5 minutes. It's literally just putting some things in the blender and pushing go. So, and then pizza, if you were really fancy, know how to throw pizza dough in the air to make your own pizza dough. You go for it. I don't know how to do that, but I'm going to just kind of stretch it out and flatten it out. You can also use a rolling pin if you prefer, but I don't know. I kind of like just flattening it out. And you can actually assemble your pizza right on a cookie sheet. If you have parchment paper, that's the easiest cleanup. Just put a cookie sheet, a piece of parchment paper, and then put your pizza right on top of the parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, you should add a little olive oil to your cookie sheet so it doesn't stick. And then I like to make a little lip on my pizza just so the sauce stays put. And then the beauty of pizza too, especially when you're making pizza with kids, is you can make personal pizzas so people can customize their own, which is always a treat. So you can put on what you like and leave off what you don't like. I'm just going to use this little knife cover here to spread this around. And if you're making your own tomato sauce, the recipe for that we use is so simple. It's just onions, saute some onions and some olive oil in the bottom of a pot, add some garlic, throw in some tomatoes, and then throw in some herbs. Fresh herbs are something else that makes pizza so good if you're making homemade. And you can grow your own herbs right in your windowsill in your kitchen. So I usually like to put thyme and rosemary and oregano. And if you want to grow your own in your kitchen, you can buy fresh herbs from the grocery store. Just take the lower leaves off, like this. In all those places that leaves were growing, if you put this in some water, roots will grow. And you can make yourself your own little herb start, put it in a little pot, grow it in your own kitchen. But fresh herbs really make a homemade tomato sauce extra special, and you can even take the fresh herbs and put them right on top of your pizza if you like that. All right, so I got my pesto. I'm going to take a little mozzarella cheese. A little trick if you don't want your toppings to burn is to put the toppings a little bit under the cheese. Some people like to mix cheeses and put a little Parmesan on here too. It's up to you and what you like. And then you can just put the toppings that you like. If you like bell peppers, you can cut up a little bit of pepper to put on there. If you like tomatoes, you can put fresh slices of tomatoes. In fact, you can even skip the tomato sauce altogether and just put slices of tomatoes on the bottom of your pizza like it was a sauce, and it's delicious. And once you take your seeds out of your peppers, you can plant these seeds and grow your own peppers. So try it at home. You can grow your own herbs and your own peppers just from making your own pizza. I'm just going to cut these bell peppers up. Put a few of those on there. You can put mushrooms. You can put fresh tomatoes. You can put really anything that you like to have on a pizza. Customize it. Make it your own. It can be a really fun thing to do with your family. Everybody make their own pizza. And then nobody's going to complain about dinner because everybody made their own. And then I would put a little more cheese on top just to keep the vegetables from burning in the oven. And you can put your oven on to, I usually put it on about 400. And I put the pizza in there and I just keep an eye on it. And once the cheese is bubbling and the crust is starting to look brown, pull it on out and your pizza is ready to go. So it's that simple. And if you try these recipes at home, let us know what you thought. Pop in the comments if you have other ways that you like to make pizza or other recipes for sauces that you want to share, we'd love to know. And I hope you all enjoy your dinner. We'll see you next time.